Welcome back to another episode of Sarah Reed's Psych Snippets. I'm Dr. Sally Richards.
I'm Dr. Brittany Hayden.
And I'm Jaclynn Stankus, one of the doctoral psychology interns.
And today, along with Jaclynn, we're going to talk with you about the second phase of parent-child interaction therapy, or PCIT, called effective commands.
So maybe you've noticed since quarantine started that you're having to repeat yourself a lot to your children, especially when you're telling them what to do. So if you find yourself giving commands over and over again without your kiddos listening, there's actually an art to the way you give a command, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first strategy to giving an effective command is actually making sure that you have your child's attention. So if you're yelling commands from downstairs and your child's upstairs, the likelihood that they're actually going to listen and that you know that they heard and understand you is quite low. So making sure that you have their attention by getting eye contact, maybe you have to come down to their level and make sure that they hear what you're actually asking them or telling them to do.
The second strategy is to make sure your commands are direct instead of indirect. A direct command makes the command not an option. So it makes it so that you're not asking the child to do something, but you're telling them to do something. So an example of a direct command would be, please pick up the blue block. Whereas an indirect command would be, can you please pick up the blue block? By turning it into a question, it gives the child the option to say no. Another common indirect command that a lot of people use, and this one's really, I use this a lot too actually, is by saying, let's clean up now. So by using the word let's, this implies that you're going to help the child, whereas you really are just expecting them to do it alone.
The third strategy is to state your commands positively. That means you want to say what you want your child to do, not what you don't want them to do. So for example, you'd want to say, please walk instead of stop running. And the other thing you want to consider when giving your commands positively is using the word please.
Yeah, I think saying please actually is modeling those appropriate manners. So our next strategy is really we want to give one single command at a time versus giving multiple commands in a row. So basically, if you don't want to tell your child, go to your room, put your shoes up, clean the Legos, and go to sleep. That's too many commands at once. So giving them one at a time, making sure they comply, each step along the way is actually going to ensure that they accomplish all the things that you expect them to do.
The next strategy is to use specific commands and ones that are developmentally appropriate. So when I say specific, you would say something like, hand me the gum. It lets the child know exactly what you would like them to do versus a vague command, which could be like settle down or behave. So these are very vague words and aren't necessarily letting the child know what to do, because behave could mean numerous things. And also to make sure that they're developmentally appropriate. So you wouldn't ask or tell a 3-year-old to write their name if they don't know how. You would make sure that they can actually complete the task.
The seventh strategy is to use a firm but pleasant tone. So you want to be aware of how you're sounding when you're giving a command to your child. I honestly would encourage you, and don't feel stupid about it, practicing either in front of a mirror or if you're alone in the car, just kind of talking to yourself and just being mindful about what you sound like, because it does make a difference.
Also, using a normal tone of voice conditions kids to learn that you mean business when you're using a normal tone, and that they don't have to wait for you to raise your voice for you to be serious to comply to something. This is also really important for when kids start school, because teachers often give commands in a normal tone of voice. They very rarely are supposed to raise their voice at children. So it teaches your kids to generalize those skills to the classroom and will comply to teachers as well.
So the next strategy that we want to cover is giving explanations. You might have a kiddo that's constantly asking you why they have to do something right now. And you can give explanations as the caregiver, but you have to be careful about when you give the explanations. So it's okay to give an explanation before a command. We're going to the store, put on your shoes. That's an appropriate way to actually give an explanation for why you're telling them to do something. Another time that you can give the explanation is after they've complied. So put on your shoes and the child listens, and then you can say, we're going to go to the park and play. So you're ensuring that they've actually complied before you spend time negotiating or explaining why you're telling them to do it. So you can give the explanations, you just have to be careful about when and how you give them.
The last way to give an effective command is to make sure that you're only giving commands when necessary. Too many commands throughout the day can frustrate a child, and it might actually cause them to lock down and not comply at all. Also, for kids who are particularly really defiant, you only really want to use commands when absolutely necessary. So maybe if a child is a little unsafe and runs into the road, by saying, please come back, or please get out of the road, versus, just giving constant play commands throughout the day. Also, going back to the last video that we did last week, going back to the labeled praises that we talked about with the pride skills, every time your child complies to any of these direct commands, it's super important to give them a labeled praise afterwards to let them know that, you notice that they complied and you're happy about it, to continuously reinforce the compliance.
So to recap, the strategies that we covered today for effective commands are: 1, make sure that you have the child's attention. 2, use direct versus indirect commands. 3, state the command in the positive. 4, make sure you give individual commands at a time versus multi-step commands. 5, be specific. 6, make sure the commands are developmentally appropriate. 7, use a normal, firm, matter-of-fact tone of voice, and feel free to say please. 8, explanations are okay, but they need to be timed well. And next, only use commands when absolutely necessary. And when you have compliance, make sure to offer a labeled praise for when your child listens.
We gave you a lot to think about, and it can be a little overwhelming. So we encourage you, like with the pride skills, to just take 1 or 2 of these at a time and practice them sparingly throughout your day.
And so even with a perfect command, sometimes your child still might not comply. So what happens when they don't? So actually in one of our future videos, we're going to address this on how to implement a consistent consequence procedure whenever there is non-compliance.
Well, we hope you have found this helpful, and please stay tuned for future episodes. Drop us a comment if you have a specific interest or if there's a topic you'd like us to cover, and make sure to take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.